tuna later. I like to keep it.
Okay, but
it
I need the
fresh.
notebook when you're done reading that.
Okay.
All right, ready?
All right, so welcome back, Double Teamed fam. How are we all doing? Happy Thursday. I hope you came. But today we have a wonderful guest here with us today. Actually, someone recommended her to us, and we found her, and we were like, oh my God, yes, of course. So, Jessica, founder of The Journey, which is a coaching platform focused on wellness and relationships. She just launched her podcast, Open Late, on her non-monogamy journey. So we've got a lot to talk about. Jessica, if you want to say hello.
Thank you so much, Cami. And thank you, Nikki. I'm really excited to be here. I was just telling you, ladies, I was deep diving on your show this whole last week because, yeah, you guys reached out to me out of the blue. You were like, someone said that we should check out your show. And that was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Here we are. I'm stoked.
Can
I'm
I
excited for
say
it too.
I just love your cover art? Yeah, the blazer and the heel moment. I'm
Thank
like,
you.
oh, girl.
Such a
Like,
power move. Yeah.
Yes.
I have to say, like, that whole shoot was so out of the norm for me. And two of my really good girlfriends, the photographer Vika and the stylist Elizabeth, and my glam page, they pulled it together because I live my life in kimonos and,
Yes!
I do, and robes and yoga clothes. And so when I was launching Open Late, my podcast, it sort of felt like this part of my identity that I hadn't ever really showed people before. And I didn't have a lot of the, clothing. And so we did the shoot for the cover art and they crushed it. Those shoes are Valentinos. And I was like, I just want to touch these everywhere and keep them on my feet and take photos of them all day long. I did.
Perfect. Okay.
Love that.
Yes.
Oh,
I've
that's so
always
good.
wanted to work with the stylist. I want to see what someone have someone look at me and be like, I know what will look good on you.
Oh my
You know?
God, girl. Big hair, big city. You have to follow her on Instagram. She is, I'm telling you, killer. And then I had
Plug her.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did a big launch party for my show and she
nice.
dressed me for the party too. And people are like, what are you wearing? It was really fun. Yeah.
I love that.
The only 2 times in my life that I've ever done that. Worth
So,
it.
let me ask, in terms of the Open Late podcast, so you started it as kind of like an outlet to discuss more about your non-monogamy journey? Because this is kind of like why I started this one too.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to you on this. Granted, I didn't have the shoot. So Cami and I took a camera and went in front of a pink wall in the
Los
middle
Angeles.
of Hollywood on Melrose and took a picture.
At, what's the store?
Yeah, the Paul something.
Yeah.
Smith? Yeah, that
Paul
one.
Smith.
Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I can totally relate to that. And for me, at least, it was one of those things where it's like, I really enjoy talking about this. I always get so many questions about it. I just wanted to use it as a creative outlet. And so that's why I started it. So what was that? What was the why for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It was a little bit born out of my need and obsession with service and what I can do for other people. I've been a coach for a long time and a facilitator. I've done a ton of retreats for women and, circles and coaching programs. And I started to see over and over that people's relationships and their relationship with themselves and their self-judgment around, having trouble being monogamous or having, just the idea that they would have to settle, and be with one person and feel not great at it.
Yeah.
Just started to show up in all of the work that I was doing. And I was privately non-monogamous for years. And my husband and I, our journey is so interesting because we didn't tell anybody that we were monogamish or having these going to sex parties or hooking up with other people and couples. And the only people who knew were maybe our Burning Man camp because we would turn up at the Orgy Dome, which is a thing at Burning Man.
My dream.
And yeah, eventually I did give a talk at Burning Man the last year that we had it in 2019. And it was so well received. And it was the first time that I was really public about it. And people kind of knew, and some of our closest friends knew at that point, but not our families. And I would certainly not talk about it, on my platform on Instagram because
Mm-hmm.
I was a coach and like I did women's retreats. It was so far from what I was doing, but it's really not. There's
Yeah.
so much intersectionality there. And once I gave my first talk about it at Burning Man, so many people followed up with me about it. And this little, community or network started to grow. And then just more people started to show up and ask me questions about it, as almost, intuitively, like the universe just kept putting them in my path. And eventually I was sitting in a course that I was peer coaching or mentor coaching, and it had like 50 people in it. And one day, so many people were sharing their self-judgment, their self-loathing about having trouble being faithful or being faithful, but after 2 or 3 years, having thoughts about fantasizing about other people and feeling like the worst partner in the world. And I'm like in my seat, like, you're fucking human. Like, you're human. You're normal. And so eventually I was like, screw it. I don't care about my own personal shame or embarrassment or about anything coming out. I was worried that I was going to hurt people like in my family that are more conservative or maybe something like that. And it just went out the window. I was like, screw it. I'm doing this. It's going to help so many people. And it has. It's been quite the 4 months of like
that.
confirmation and feed forward. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely can agree with a lot of that in the sense that I went through, when my husband and I opened up, we didn't tell anyone either. And I know I've talked about in the show before how like Cami didn't know, and Cami's like the person that knows everything about my life.
Wow.
And she didn't know for like, I think a year or two, just because, yeah, like you said, you carry like shame with it, or you're just like, you don't know how to communicate that. And we were so new, like in the beginning of it, I hardly even like knew what to call it, what it was, like the terms, all of that. And so I just knew that, we had this agreement and we were good with it and we were happy. So like, whatever. And then when it came to, releasing, this podcast as well, it was kind of that same feeling. It's like, you know what, to hell with it all. Like,
yeah.
I just want to like, to me, I didn't have any sources to look to when I first started my journey because I didn't know. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know anything about it. And I just want people to have sources that they can turn to learn more about it because, yeah, like it's a valid option. And I think people forget that, like you said, everyone came to you with questions because everyone's curious. It's so out of the norm. And I think it's so normal to want to know, even if it's to just like understand like, okay, this is what it's like and maybe it's not for me. Like, I think that's a valid thing for people to pursue as well.
Yes. And I love what you said. There was not a healthy model out there because we opened up, like 7, almost 8 years ago now for the first time. And it was like, there was not a single resource, no one to talk to.
Yeah.
And I kept it from my best friend for a couple of years, maybe like 2-3 years. And it was so liberating to like share. And now same as you, it is sort of my outlet for it. And I feel like it was born out of this need to help other people. And now I love this because it's like this deep level of self-acceptance that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just been the best. And I love like having people on. And now I get to, the premise of my show for the first like 10 or 12 episodes was I had people interview me because I always call myself like the most boring polyamorous person you'll ever meet. And I knew that I wouldn't sort of tell a juicy enough story. I had to have people ask me questions about my journey so that I would share the fun stuff. Otherwise, I'm like trying to spin everything in this like, here's how I was learning and growing. And it's like, no, people want your sex stories, Jessica. So I had people interview me for the first 10 episodes, and now I'm getting to interview other people on topics that I'm super excited about, like, power dynamics and kink and tantra. And so
love that. That's awesome. Now, okay, we talked a little bit about how you started the podcast and everything. I'm curious, how did you and your husband kind of come to the realization that you wanted to explore non-monogamy, especially 8 years ago? That's a long time. So and to be able to practice it that long and still be here today and all of that. So I'm curious, how did that come about?
Yeah, it's a really fun story. We had an accidental threesome.
Oh,
yes.
nice.
And it was really nice. It was such a fun night. It was New Year's. We weren't even married yet. I think we had been living together for about 6 months, but we knew like we had been friends for a while. And
Mhm.
like when he moved in, we just knew that this was it. Like we were going to be together and get married. And, you know, it was like everything else stopped. And we went out on New Year's and we took home one of my girlfriends that I had like an attraction to for a while, but I never acted on it. She and I definitely had like, I think, a mutual understanding that there was sexual chemistry there, but I was so like in my little box of like, I don't hook up with women, other than when I was like in college and it was, you know, you like made out with people because it was like the thing to do, right? But I had so much shame around what that actually could mean that I walked out of like multiple potential threesomes in my 20s. I was very closed-minded in that I was worried about what it would mean. And like the aftermath of it all. And like, you know, if it would ruin things because of just like, you know, shit that you like grow up hearing or believing or, you know, other people's things impressed upon you, their, you know, projections. So finally, I'm in this amazing relationship. And I think that's why I felt safe enough to like go there and ended up kissing this girlfriend at midnight because she was like there single solo and she made a cute joke. She's like, well, who am I gonna kiss at midnight? And Pasha was like, you can kiss Jessica, like you guys can kiss, I'm good, I don't need
I'll watch.
I can like just remember his face. He was like, I think he thought he masterminded the whole thing, but we went home. It was the longest cab ride. This was back before Uber. Like we used to take cabs. I was living in Vegas. We lived in Vegas at the time. And this cab driver took, I think, hours, but we were like so drunk. And like we just like were in the back of the cab doing everything, which was a blast. And
I love that.
yeah. And then it was just a magical night. And after that, we actually continued to see her, like, you know, here and there. Not super consistently, but enough that we carried on like a beautiful little relationship as she was single before she met her, you know, partner. And it was like the beginning of this amazing thing that I had no idea was going to turn into my life. And now like something that I share with the world because I was like, I had no idea it was going to happen. And then after it, I was so concerned with like what everybody would think. And Pasha calmed me down and he's like, well, first of all, no one has to know. And I was like, good, because this needs to be a secret. Big time. And he's like, also, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. All that matters is if you liked it, like that's something you should explore. And I did. And he encouraged me to explore with other women on my own if I wanted to. And we started being monogamous. We would do things together. We like eventually got on Fields when it was like brand new.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and met other singles and couples, and it was amazing. Just started exploring and like, you know, tiptoeing our way into things, seeing what we liked, seeing what we didn't. And eventually after, I think the first year and a half or 2 years of that, we started dating separately.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's been an evolution ever since, but so much fun.
I mean, I think that's how kind of it goes for everybody. It's an evolution. It starts out, you know, something kind of opens the door to it, and then you go from there. I always laugh, you know, the bi girlfriend or bi wife pipeline into polyamory.
Yes.
It's so true, right? Like the girl's like, you know what? Like, I love your dick, but I kind of want to, let's see what it's like with girls. And the next thing you know, you're like full blown polyamorous.
Yes.
And like,
hell yes.
You're seeing men and women. They're seeing women, maybe men. You never know. Like, I love to see the evolution of it because I think, you know, it is something that is good to take slow. It sounds like you guys took it at a good pace, what you were comfortable with. But B, like, you grow along the way and you just continue to grow into it and figure out like what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing. So what structure do you guys currently practice, if you want to use like the full on terms?
It's so funny. We're not like a huge fan of labels, and we've always been very fluid in our relationship.
That's
I think
fair.
in the beginning we were concerned with like, well, I was concerned with like, what is this? And, you know,
What
what
are
are
we?
what are we?
Yeah.
Right. I remember when I realized that we were like transitioning from kind of monogamish with like some boundaries to like open, and I got really freaked out, and I was like, we're not just going to have an open marriage. And now I'm like, I will never not have an open marriage.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the idea of that feels so limiting to me. Might have something to do with the fact that like I have a lot of air in my chart and I'm like a very airy constitution.
Us too.
Yeah.
What's your sign?
I'm an Aquarius.
Okay, we're Libras, but
Ooh.
what's the rest? So we're, we have a lot of Scorpio, we have a lot of Libra, and I think those are the two that we mainly have.
We do have an Aquarius placement.
Yeah, we do. Saturn. So what's the other air?
I'm an Aquarius and I have a Scorpio rising and I have a Leo moon. So I'm actually balanced in my astrology, but in like Ayurveda and in other things, I have a lot of air,
Nice.
just like by nature. And the Aquarius is like the most like need for freedom sign.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Of all
most
the
air
air
sign
signs,
of
yeah.
air sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and my husband has Aquarius. He's an Aquarius rising and a Pisces.
What's his sun?
He is a, Pisces sun. Sorry, I was
Pisces
thinking
sun.
moon. He has a Virgo moon. He's a little like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pisces sun.
Wait, so your birthday's coming up.
It is.
And his
Yeah,
too, right
February
after.
6th. Mhm,
Oh,
and
that
he's
is so
March 17th.
exciting.
Happy early
Yeah.
birthday.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but my husband and my other partner have the same birthday.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yes.
Love that.
Mhm.
Well, that's easy to remember at least. Makes
Yeah.
it super easy. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, they're both like, and you know, she's a woman. So I have like the most amazing man in that form, like in that astrological makeup, and the like goddess version of it too.
Oh, I
Which
love that.
I didn't realize how crazy that would be when we all first started, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. But now I'm like, holy shit, this is like the jackpot. Because I love everything about him and just sort of the way he operates. And she's the same.
Pisces are deep, man. They're
Mhm.
morose. They're like there's such a depth to them, but they're dreamers. You know, they're ruled by Neptune. And I have a thing for Pisces men. They're kind of my Achilles heel. And you know what they say, like Pisces dream, Libras make it happen. So that's kind of, and I think, you know, Aquarius is kind of one of those signs too. Like they make it happen.
Yes.
So maybe that's what it is. Like they're the dreamers and you're the one that's like, let's lay it all out. Let's get it
It's true.
together. Yeah.
That's how we operate.
I love that. So now, so you mentioned your husband and your other partner.
Mhm.
I know a little bit of this story just because I know we talked about it, and also in, you know, listening to some of your episodes as well. But to kind of dive into it for our listeners, now, okay, you know, let me backtrack a little bit here. When it comes to triads, as I'm sure you know, there's always there's a lot of opinions about triads. Let's put it that way. How they're supposed to be formed. You know, the ethical way for it to form, how they should operate. I think of all the structures in polyamory, they tend to be the most, the most discussed, be the ones that most people are like, don't do it, it's way too hard. Oh, that was my phone, ignore that. Anyways.
Oh, I was like, what fell? Did equipment fall?
No, it was just my phone. But no, people tend to look at them, they're like, it's way too hard, it's very complicated. And I mean, I've never been in a full-blown triad, but I did tell my doms that I love them, and turns out they love me too. So
That's amazing.
Cami, you were right there. It was New Year's Eve. Yeah. You
Things
forgot.
were not remembered.
Oh, okay.
That's
Anyways,
so great. But congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know if it's a full-blown triad. You know, they listen to the podcast. I'm going to have to ask them. But what I was getting to that is, like, I don't have a lot of experience in triads. But you know, I find them very fascinating. I think they're very interesting. And it sounds like you guys definitely had a very healthy way about approaching it. So do you want to kind of give us the
Yes.
cliff notes on how that all formed and started and whatnot?
Yes. Hearing you like even ask that question was making me realize like I don't have a lot of experience with triads either. And I just love the way that you talk about this because I can tell that you guys do your research and you kind of like check things out, and you know the topics that you're going to talk about, you really want to know them well, because I'm like, is that the most talked about? Like I'm still learning.
If you go on Reddit and TikTok,
yeah, I need to get on TikTok. Okay, so that's like my assignment
it's a
for
scary
next week.
world out there.
I want to make it happen. And you asked me about labels, and actually we got sidetracked. So when you were
Oh,
saying
yeah,
triad, I
I'm
was
so
like,
sorry.
oh,
I'm so sorry.
I got sidetracked. I don't even think I answered your question. But so we were a triad for a little bit, and now we're back to that place where we're like, we're all, fluid, because they're like water signs, and I'm an Aquarius. I'm like, we can't have labels. And she
moving.
broke up with me, so there's that. No, I tend to make that joke a lot. That's not really what happened. Here we go.
All right, let's see.
So Pasha and Lauren had they actually met before, right around the time that Pasha and I met years ago, like 9-10 years ago. And they went on a date. They like met on an app, like Tinder or Hinge back then. I don't even know if there were other ones. And they went on a date, and they had like a little bit of chemistry, but nothing ever came of it. It became a friend zone thing. And she says now that she really wasn't over her ex. She like started crying on the date.
I see. Yeah.
So
We've all been there.
Yeah, they end up like nothing happens between them, and they were like Instagram friends or whatever, but 7 years go by. And when I met my husband, he was coaching in this, personal development course that then I ended up doing because he and a bunch of our friends were doing it. So 7 years later, we are mentor coaching in this. It's the same course I was talking about earlier. And in walks Lauren as like a participant. And he kind of like comes over to me, that morning, and he's like, hey, just so you know, there's a girl in here that like I made out with, but like nothing, never went anywhere. But like I just want you to be aware, because we tell each other everything. And he's like, interesting dynamic. So he winds up being her coach, and they end up getting like really close, but in a very platonic way, because in this program there's like, once you get into the thick of it, you're really working on yourself, and you're super vulnerable. Like it's not sexy. You're like, even with the coaches. So, but she ends up becoming really good friends with all of our friends, because also like our best friend Claude and Ben and Sean, like a bunch of our friends did this course at the same time. My mom was in there for this group. So Lauren ends up moving in with Claude, who's like my husband's best friend.
Oh, wow.
And they live less than a mile from our house. So she moves to LA, it moves in with Claude, and we're hanging out all the time. And she's a photographer, and like she and I are doing photo shoots now. So we go on this photo shoot. She's like, it would make this photo better if you were naked. And I was like, you're absolutely right. This is like 10 minutes into the photo shoot. This is our first shoot. And so she gets me naked, and I'm like, oh, okay, Lauren's like, I feel like maybe into me, but I'm not so sure. And I had sensed a little bit of chemistry between her and Pasha, because at this point, the course was over months ago. And, she's coming over to her house for like pizza and wine nights, and like, we have a hot tub. And so I'm like, maybe there's a little attraction there. So we go to dinner that night with Pasha, and we end up going home, just the three of us, to our place, and we have more wine. And we're like talking, and that gets a little sexy, and we're like telling sex stories, and it gets sexier. And then Pasha's like rubbing her shoulders, and I'm like, this is about to go down.
Did y'all play Never Have I Ever?
I don't think we did.
That's how you get it started.
That's something that my husband would do. Like, he's like definitely the engine. But I think it was his idea to like tell your most racy sex story or whatever. And we actually were calling friends and making them tell us their sex stories too. We were like bringing people in. So pre-polyamorous of us. So they start kissing. He like Spider-Man kisses her, because he's like massaging her shoulder. Her and I are like sitting on the floor around my coffee table, and then like I like look over, and he's like kissing her, and then they stop, and she like looks at me like, is this okay? And I like,
wait, did she not know y'all were non-monogamous?
So she says that she didn't know, and I'm like, at that point, which is so interesting, because I, in my mind, thought that everybody started to know, because
I see. Okay.
Claude knew, and he was like our best friend, and like a lot of people that she had become friends with through our friend group knew. So I'm like, how does Lauren not know? So she's like, no, I didn't know. I was taken by surprise. But I'm like, maybe that's what she really wants. Like sometimes you can convince yourself you don't know something. But apparently she didn't. So we were both kind of shocked about that. And she looks at me, and I look at her, and I'm like, that was really beautiful. Don't stop because of me. And she just like gets these like a huge eyes, like big smile. And she, because she had threesomes before, but not really any experience with polyamory. It was just like party, fun, whatever. And so that night, the three of us had an epic threesome, like the best of my life. And I can tell they had chemistry, but I didn't know that she was really attracted to me. And so like that played out, and it was so nice. It was like the most, I think, loving and just, I don't know, just this beautiful flow of like equal bonding. And her and I got some time to like really connect, and it was like massive fireworks. And it was the first time that I was like, oh my God, I actually like want to see her again. I had threesomes with women in the past. I loved having sex with women, but it was a very like physical thing.
Yeah.
Like it was just really fun, and women are beautiful. Women's bodies are gorgeous. Of course, like who doesn't want to have sex with women? But I felt this like, I don't know, feeling for Lauren. And I was like, oh my God, I hope she feels it too, because I'm like really into her.
Like romantic feelings. Yeah.
And I was like, something's going to happen just between the two of them. And I was really excited about it because I had my own thing in the past with other guys. Never really another woman. Like I was saying, I didn't have that like romantic attraction. But I had definitely had other guys, like 2 cases where I carried on relationships that, meant something to me, that like I cared for them, they cared for me.
Yeah.
And Posh had never really had that.
And
I think it's a little bit harder for men to find that with women.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, in like the non-monogamy space, because most women are looking for a primary partner or, whatever. And so I was like really excited for them. And then very quickly it became clear that she was interested in both of us. And it wasn't like she even knew that until it happened. And it just evolved into this like beautiful triad. And it lasted in the way that the 3 of us were romantic and consistent for about 9 months, where, Posh and I were not like seeing or dating anybody else. There was like no need. The 3 of us were together all the time. And then at about like 9 months, the 2 of them kind of just fizzled out naturally. They started to feel like I've said this so many times, I feel like a broken record, but they're born in the same day. They're twin flames. They have a lot of brother-sister energy. And there's a lot of like, mentorship there too. And, between the 2 of them, but, him as a mentor. And so they started to fizzle out, and her and I got closer. Like we were like, okay, well, we're not stopping. What's happening here? And, and then we also started working together. We started doing retreats together and leading women's circles. And Lauren's an amazing photographer. So we do like, we help women really unleash like the goddess and heal any kind of like body shame so that they can take like these gorgeous photos. And so she and I just continued to blossom until we took the label off also, because then at some point she like wanted to date again. And I was like, of course you should. But she's like, I feel like I can't if like we have this label. Like I just want to have,
that makes
like
sense.
Ultimate freedom. And so now we're just all very fluid. And, when the 3 of us are together, like on vacation or something, we'll have like an amazing time, and it'll be like really great, and everybody is romantic and included. And then we go about our normal lives, and Lauren is still at my house, like, I don't know, 4 days a week. And the 2 of them will like, it's really sweet. They'll like kiss and cuddle and hug, and then they just go back to like doing their thing.
And that's that, yeah.
Yeah. And people are always like, well, what do you call that? And I'm like, I don't know. We're a family. It's very...
It doesn't need a label.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's very organic.
It was very organic, very non-GMO.
Well, no, it
this
sounds
relationship is from Erewhon.
Yeah.
We love Erewhon. I always make that joke because I say that too. I'm like, it's very organic. And then my friend was like, what, like non-GMO relationships?
Yes. Oh, the Erewhon reference.
Yeah.
And first of all, I want in on one of these photo shoots.
Yes. Oh my God, you guys should come. Yes. She does like 1-day events.
That'd
sometimes.
Cool.
We do like 4-day retreats. Like we have one in Sedona and one in Cabo coming up in the spring.
Oh,
you guys should come. It'd be amazing. And yeah, we do a lot. I mean, there's a lot that happens on the retreat. We do like a healing ceremony and the photo shoot, but she does like 1-day shoots usually in Malibu at the beach.
Oh, I
that's
love
beautiful.
that.
Mhm.
Well, but I was gonna say, it sounds like you all gave each other the room and great, like just
Autonomy.
autonomy to
Mhm.
see how you wanted it to be for yourself.
Yeah.
And you all did that like seamlessly.
So
Mhm.
healthy. Yeah, like you must all be excuse me. You must all be very like emotionally developed. Which it sounds like you are if you're, coaching and in healing and in all of that. Like maybe that's where it stems from. And maybe that's why you guys had such like a positive experience in this triad, because, like I was mentioning earlier, the reason that they're the most talked about, or the ones that I see people voice the most opinion on, is because a lot of times it's a couple and they
Mhm.
add a third, and then, things pop up like couples privilege and hierarchy
Right.
and all these things, and like autonomy goes out the window, and it's like if the third person breaks up with one, then that means the whole thing
Mhm.
dissolves because they break up with the couple. And so it sounds like you and your husband walked into it with a lot of autonomy, in the sense it's like, okay, maybe her and I aren't working out, but if you two want to explore that, that's totally fine. And like I think that's just such a like a healthy way to do it. And it shows, you said this was a couple of years into your non-monogamy journey?
Yeah, this was like a decent time. I think like 4 or 5 years almost into
Nice,
it.
okay.
So yeah, we had been like through that kind of stuff and putting in the work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So you kind of you were better set up for it, and it's not
Mhm.
something that you jumped into right in. So I applaud you guys for that. And like
Thank you.
I remember when I learned more about it, I'm like, this is the blueprint that we should give to everyone that's like, we want to add a third. I'm like, follow this.
Yeah, we need to like write a book, how to add your third.
Yeah.
And it's true, like not everybody is in this place, and I feel really lucky. We had been on that personal development journey for a long time, and I worked through, like we both did, so much jealousy, so much,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where Lauren called me one day in the very beginning, and she was like terrified because she's like, I think I'm gonna fall in love with your husband. Like, how is that okay with you? And I was like, I don't know, but like I'm here for it. And it was the first time, because I had been triggered by women in the past and not really fully open to the idea of like him falling in love with somebody else. But it was just timing and like a different stage in my life where I was like, I'm more excited than scared of this. And, at the end of the day, like if someone's not meant to be with you, you shouldn't try to like hold on to them, because that's like not
No,
I'm not gonna
absolutely.
keep them.
So and props to her, because she's extremely emotionally intelligent too. Like she's done the work and came into this relationship with like so much grace and I think just maturity. So she was like the perfect third.
I'm curious, in terms of, because you said that was her first experience with non-monogamy. Was there anything that you like turned her to, or did you kind of, I don't want to say like coach her, but like, kind of like fill her in on, kind of the work that you guys put into it and everything? Just because I feel like a lot of times when it's someone that is monogamous or has only been in monogamous relationships, and, they're welcomed into a polyamorous space, someone's got to kind of take the lead into helping this person kind of understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's such a great question, because it made me think of this moment. We were on vacation. We went to Bali with like a big group of our friends, and we spent so much of this vacation like processing and talking and like being uncomfortable and like crying. And because at the time, this was like right around the time that we had really slid into this like groove of, okay, it's the three of us and we go on this trip, and my husband's like very flirty, and she had really never seen him that way because we had been so focused on her.
Yeah.
And now we're like, in Bali partying, like in these beautiful places, beautiful people. And she was really triggered by him like showing attention or affection to other women in a way that he wasn't even really like stepping over any boundaries, but it made us realize that we didn't set up relationship agreements with her.
Yeah.
We had them between the two of us, but this was all brand new to her.
Yeah.
And so I actually almost had to like step in and help the two of them communicate. I mean, and the three of us, but my husband didn't realize like we were expecting Lauren to do like 5 years of the work in like, 5 days. Having like, not gone through all the things that we went through together. So that was really interesting. And, for her, it was a learning curve. But really all she needed was like assurance and to know that she, know how Pasha felt about her and to know that she was safe and like what his intentions were if he was going to be flirting. And that's like really all it is. It's like we didn't communicate and then things like, got really messy quickly because of assumptions and projections. And like as soon as we sat down and we were like, okay, let's have this uncomfortable conversation. And I think it sounds like we need relationship agreements and boundaries like with Lauren and like how we all want to show up. Then it was like easy cake. And another thing that I feel like her and I learned together, and like I even learned because of her, is like Pasha and I have been together for so much longer, and it's not that we don't take our relationship for granted. We work on it consistently. Like we're even in therapy right now because like we want to start a family soon. So we're like, we need to make sure we are in tip top shape because kids are going to try to fuck that up. So we're like, working on ourselves in our relationship, but we're effortless in how we spend time together. And working with Lauren as far as like a business partner, she's the one who stepped up and been like, we have to put in work in our romantic relationship or I'm not going to be happy. And I was like, okay, now I have two people that I, for me, it was a learning curve. And she was the one who was like, this is what I need. Eventually she started to speak up, and because our relationship went to the back burner when we started putting out a lot of offerings together, and all of it was so well received that we got really busy, with our work. And she's like, we need a date night. Like, this is not okay. And so in a lot of ways, she like re-taught me things that I haven't really had to think about since I haven't really been dating. And I hadn't. That's why I call myself the most boring polyamorous person, because there've been long stretches of time where like I don't really express myself as polyamorous and haven't dated. And that's why this year I'm actually like focusing on my pleasure. 2022 is the year of that for me. I even got a pleasure coach because for a while I just like, put all of that on the back burner to focus on work. And then I have these two partners. So it's like everything got to a little bit of like autopilot. And she was like, I don't like this. And I'm like, okay, yes, ma'am, we're doing it.
I like that you mention the fact that like how you say you're boring just because you're not like dating around. Like I feel like I see so much on the fact that like monogamous, like people who practice monogamy, they look at polyamorous or non-monogamous people and they're like, oh, shouldn't you be dating like all the time?
Right.
And it's like, no. I can have two partners and be fine.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean I have a whole Tinder
or zero
roster.
partners.
Yeah, or zero partners.
You can be polyamorous and have zero partners at one time, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People forget that.
It's interesting. I think like when people hear you're polyamorous or, non-monogamous, it gets like almost over-sexualized because that's all they equate it with, right? Yeah. And it's like...
Or they think you just want to fuck everyone.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, just because I'm non-monogamous doesn't mean I want to have sex.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
It's like I don't want to fuck everyone any more than you want to fuck everybody, but in your mind, and you just don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being slutty and polyamorous, because I put a lot of emphasis on my pleasure personally. But at the same time, like I agree. People look at you and they're like, "Oh, then all you want is sex," and I'm like, "No, I want meaningful relationships. Like I want to date you, or I want to, like." build something here, but like they have a hard time like grasping the ability to have multiple loving relationships, which I understand. Like it's not a very, it's not a common thing. It's becoming more common, thankfully. But it's still, something that people struggle with. I was going to touch on how you mentioned, your partner, Lauren, having to, you guys put in 5 years worth of work and then she comes in. It just reminds me of, when my husband first started dating his girlfriend. It was kind of a very similar situation where she'd only ever been in monogamous relationships. And like, I just remember the first time him and I were going to a sex party, and him and I were going as a couple, and she was like, and I remember she came to me, she was like, is this like a you and him thing, or is this, like she was asking about it. And I realized, too, that there were some things that we had to like kind of like take into consideration, and you really don't think about them until you like face up,
Right, until you're
that
in
situation. Exactly, yeah. Or like you said, when she saw him with other women and maybe got a little bit of those jealous feelings or didn't know how to react. Like I remember too when we would go out to places, the three of us, and either she would get attention from a guy or he would get attention from a girl, and the two of them were trying to figure out the dynamic of like, this is a brand new relationship. She's only ever been monogamous. Like, this is new for him too, to have like, both a girlfriend, a wife, and whatever. And so it's just very interesting. Just reminds me of those times and how you really can't catch someone up to that level of
Here are the cliff notes.
Yeah, you really
we
can't.
wrote them down for you.
But at the same time, like, I really commend the people that are monogamous and then walk into like a polyamorous relationship or something that's non-monogamous and are willing to like give it a try and put themselves in that situation, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Yes.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned you guys want children, and that always makes me curious, because people all the time, they're like, well, how is that going to work if you're non-monogamous? But actually, let's backtrack. You said you're going to focus this year on pleasure. Maybe that's going to become before children.
Yes.
I highly recommend the last episode we just did on the erogenous zones.
I listened to it. It was so good.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really big on the ears. And the back of the knees, actually, are like my hot spot. Yeah.
Like right here.
Mm-hmm.
Love that for you. So I guess my question there is that something you want to focus on, and then kind of like when you bring a family aspect into it, is that still going to be a focus? If that's not too intrusive of a question.
No, I love it. Thank you. I think I had this idea in my head that when we had children, all of my fun would have to stop, or at least would go on the back burner, as I'm sure it will, right? Especially the first couple of years.
Yeah, maybe for a little bit of time.
Yeah. But we've decided, and we decided years ago, that we likely will not stop being, polyamorous people. Just because we have kids, like it's the same, you're not going to be able to turn it off. It won't be the focus. And so, yeah, part of this year was like, this will be my last year, as a woman who's not a mother already. And so I really do want to focus on my pleasure, because I put it on the back burner for a long time. And then I started working with a coach, and I also have a friend that I admire so much, because she's a mother, and granted, her kids are, they're not like babies anymore, but she has really focused on centralizing like her pleasure and her identity and making sure that she still has this beautiful life that she made for herself. And I was like, oh my God, you really can have both. And so I started to think about this year as almost like laying the foundation so that when I do have kids, I can have really solid practices. And it's not just about like pleasure with, other people and other partners. It's just like pleasure-based practices in general that feel really good in my body, whether that's dancing or, or solo pleasure like masturbating or making time for dates and other people. It's like, I want to make sure I don't lose myself, in my motherhood. But when we do have kids, we certainly won't stop, especially with Lauren. Like, she's such a big part of our lives, and I don't see myself not being affectionate with her, like in front of my children. I don't want to really hide anything from them. I had the fear that like, okay, kids maybe get bullied, but we also like live in Los Angeles where everybody has like two dads or two moms or whatever. So, I kind of, that went out the window with that. And I just think that the more people I have in my life, responsibly, of course, like I'm not going to introduce strangers to, my children, in a way that, would be where they're people coming in and out of their lives. But certainly like Lauren and other friends that I've maybe been intimate with, I want them to be there because I want my kids to see like what's possible, and that love really does just multiply. And it's just like more people to, love at the end of the day.
I love that.
Yeah.
And
I'll be the fun aunt.
Yes.
If you need an orgy night, I love babysitting, so I will be the fun aunt.
Oh my God,
Cammie's a
thank
much
you.
better babysitter than I am. I'll go to the orgy. Cammie will
Okay.
babysit.
Sounds good.
I'm the more motherly one out of the two of
You
us.
really
But
are.
I don't know if I ever want my own kids, but I love babysitting. Oh,
I was
love
gonna
it.
say, yeah. Do you want kids?
I don't either at the moment. I always say I'll revisit the subject in about 5 to 7 years. But I mean, for me at least, like, one of the big things kind of entering into non-monogamy is that, like, I absolutely love the idea of raising a family with someone, but it not necessarily being my child. So, like, I would love, like, if my husband had a child with someone else and, like, to continue to be a part of that and be in that family, or like if I had, other partners that had children, like I would love to experience that and be a part of that, but not necessarily, like, I don't feel the need to have like my own biological children. And when you talk about that, like what my mind goes to, I don't know if you've ever read Sex at Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
they talk about like the community aspect.
Yes.
And, prior to capitalism and agriculture and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
like I think that is just such a dream. Like if you had a community of people to like raise the children kind of in a more, like in a way that, you've got more of a community around it. I don't know what's another word for community.
Or
Tribe.
I feel like tribe is kind of like
tribe.
a hot word. People don't like when you use it anymore, but it's like
Oh,
we all came from tribes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or they say it takes a village, like
Mhm.
I just think that concept to me is really cool, rather than like everyone's in like their very separate nuclear families and like there is none of that kind of tribal
Girl,
feel,
preach.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love it so much. And I have like a whole group of friends that we're not intimate with. We're very intimate, but not like lovers. It's like my best friends in LA. We talk about realistically like moving to a compound together.
Yeah.
right?
Because everybody's kind of starting to want to have, kids soon. We're all in our mid to late 30s. And yeah, the idea of doing it alone in isolation in this nuclear family like
Mhm.
construct is not attractive to me whatsoever.
Yeah, same.
I want my kids to like learn from other families and learn from other kids and just like grow up that way. I grew up that way kind of because where I'm from in Philadelphia, it's very like I grew up in the inner city, and on our street, like all the houses are attached, kind of like New York, if you imagine like brownstones in a big city. My dad's sister and her husband lived right next door to us, and then my dad's brother and his wife lived in the house next door to them, and then there was a house in between, and then my mom's best friend and her husband and their kids, and like everyone had kids together, and then of course like the list goes on to other cousins and things, but we were together all day every day, and we would eat in each other's homes, and like I feel like as children you just like need that.
Yeah.
You just need that community. You need to have other role models that aren't just like your parents, because think about all that like extra emotional regulation that's happening and all of that, like all that secure bonding.
Yeah.
It's just like I can't imagine. I want my kids to be the most conscious, secure, like attached people ever.
No, I agree. And I think all the time, like, if I did ever have my own children, like I always like think to like how big of a role Cami would play in their lives, or like vice versa. And so that's what, like, to me, that's always been kind of such a norm, because like I couldn't imagine my life without her. So it's like she will always be there. If I ever had children, or like vice versa, we will always be a part of their lives. So like, and I do think, like you said, for people like us that don't want that isolation, that nuclear family, we want more of like that community feel. I don't know if that's everyone's way of thinking, or if that's necessarily like where we're headed as a society, but I would love to see that, because I do think it's more beneficial to children. I do think when you have that isolation, in my opinion, I don't know if, what it looks like in reality or whatever, but I think that's where a lot of those problems, like in emotional maturity, stem from.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I think, like you said, when you're exposed to like more adults, more mindsets, more like everyone handles emotions so differently. When you have kind of like a potluck of it all, and you're kind of aware of it all, then I think you kind of like as a child, then you can see like, okay, there's different ways of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I can go about this like a multitude of ways rather than like, this is how my dad processed emotions. That's the only way to process emotions.
Right.
This is how my mom did it. That's the only way. So like if you have a family or like a community that's very integrated, you have such like an exposure to all kinds of people and how they process and how they communicate, how they, express love and everything, then you as a child growing up, you can form an opinion that's, I think, has more experience and everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
I was
So
gonna
many more
say-
data points.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I wouldn't want my child to idolize me because then, when, like, as a kid, when you idolize your parents, then it's like they can't mess up. They have to be perfect. And then when they do fuck up, then you're like, what the hell? Like, they're not humans. Like, they're this. So, like, oh, God, okay. So, and I agree with you there. Like, if I have my own children, like, I would want them to have other big role models that they can also like idolize in a way. That way, like Nikki said, you can form your own opinion on how to handle things by, observing from more than one person. So,
Yeah.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I fully support y'all in this journey, and I'm excited to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, and I mean, like I said, it sounds like you guys have put in a lot of work into it. And as you, have a family and continue on that journey, I think you guys have a great foundation for it. And I know there are a lot of creators out there that have families and, are polyamorous or non-monogamous. So I don't remember their accounts off the top of my head, but there are some good examples of it out there.
I know. I need to do a deep dive because I also need to go swimming in the world of polyamory more.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, like I said, I didn't for years. And it wasn't until like around the time that a little bit before I started the podcast that I was like, oh, there's like other people that do this. And oh my God, there's like a million ways to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool to see how everyone does it. But I definitely think it's possible to both have a family and be polyamorous. I kind of wanted to touch back a little bit on how you said you didn't, you wanted to kind of establish the foundation for your pleasure before going into motherhood. I really admire that. And I really admire what you said about like wanting to make sure that, as you enter motherhood, that you, continue to stay true to yourself. Because I feel like a lot of times women do lose themselves in it. And I think, in my opinion, like from an outsider's perspective, probably having people like Lauren in your life will help you with that.
Yeah.
As you do that.
I hope so.
Yeah. Because they're kind of that anchor. And, that's someone that's like, kind of tied to your pleasure in a way, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I hope. And I have a lot of like really amazing mommy friends who tell me like your life is going to look so different and you can't prepare for it. And in many ways, like you will lose yourself for a little bit, for a couple of years. And I'm kind of okay with it, knowing that I'll set myself up the best way that I can. And kind of like you're saying, I have these beautiful people in my life that are going to be my anchors or my touchstones. And, I'll do the best that I can, as it's happening. But if I set up like such a solid foundation, I'll sort of know what I can go back to or know what things can look like. And it's just going to be a really fun year. So I'm excited about it.
So have you dated a lot of men in your polyamory journey?
I haven't dated a lot of men. I've dated, I would say, throughout the whole process, there are 2 guys that I can think of that I like cared about and like had, spent an extended amount of time with. One for, multiple years. Like we saw each other for 3+ years.
Oh, wow.
We're still like great friends. He just lives, on the other side of the country now. And then like I've had little flings, that will carry on for like a few dates, but nothing's really ever been that special. And I think the beauty of being polyamorous and being like in an open marriage is you can be super selective.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone can be super selective. Actually, let me like backtrack. But the perspective that I have as a married woman who has a beautiful, other woman that I'm also, in love and in relationship with, it's like, you've got to be really special and like come prepared to add to my life.
Yeah.
Because I don't have like the energy or time for somebody that's going to draw from my life. And I know I bring a lot of value. So, I mean, truthfully, there haven't been that many men that have shown up and really like made a difference in my life. I'm like, I want to hang out with you more.
Well, I ask because like I'm curious, you know, if you had any prominent relationships or kind of like your experience in dating and what they thought of like if they knew of Lauren and your husband or you know, kind of what I guess, you know, I feel like the reactions I always get, especially I have a girl that I've been seeing for a little while, you know, and then like my husband, and then I just have like casual partners, and most recently my 2 doms. But a lot of times people, like especially men, they're just very overwhelmed by it.
Very overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I've actually found like, God, I'm just going to be honest. I find that it's so overwhelming for some that carries into the bedroom.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I feel for you, but like this is like becoming a waste of my time. You know, and I get it. It's not for everybody. And I think like, you know, when we've been in this lifestyle for a while, and I can tell you're like a very empowered woman. You know what you want, you know what you want to try. And if you don't know what you want, you're like excited and curious, and you're coming from this like beautiful, empowered place. And, you know, it's challenging for men to like, it scares the shit out of them.
They're like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
You know what you want? I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's circle back if that. No, I love that you said that, you know, in dating Lauren, it kind of raised the bar, because for me, when I started dating women is when I was like, this is the level of emotional maturity out there?
Yes.
Everyone needs to step it the fuck up.
It's the best,
absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's true. Kimi, you got to give it a try sometime.
Wait, so you've never been with a woman?
She's working on it.
So, I don't know. I gave it a shot at a sex party. I was like, you know what? I don't want to limit myself. I want to see how it is, you know, being sexual with women. And I tried it. I dipped my toes in a little bit, but it was my first sex party, and there was a lot going on. So it was kind of like too much, and I was like, I don't know if I really vibed with it. And then now I'm like thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll give it another go. Next sex party, I'm gonna like, okay, I'll allow myself to explore the space. But I guess I don't know if I'm just like picky or selective, or maybe I'm just unfortunate. That's another thing I always say. I'm just unfortunately straight. So
I mean, maybe
I'm not
are
saying
straight,
don't force it. Don't force it. I'm just saying when you start dating women, it really raises the bar for emotional maturity, and you realize what an awesome relationship could look like if it's 2 very emotionally aware people. Not saying that men aren't emotionally aware. I'm just saying the women I've been with, I've been very emotionally aware, and that has opened my eyes to the capacity a relationship can have with that level of awareness.
Yeah. Also, like, I don't know. I haven't been to like a slew of sex parties. I've been to a fair share of sex parties, but I feel like that might not be the best place to give it a shot again, because
I agree.
Not that it's not a good place to like have sex with new people. It's just when like, God, sex with girls, it's just like there's so much more exploration, I feel like, that happens like on a deep level that can be like so much fun and sexy and nurturing and healing. Like, I mean, I've had like amazing healing sex with, you know, men. I mean, mainly my husband. I don't think I've had healing sex with any other men. I've felt like so touched to my core, like felt like trapped emotions moving out of my body, like the way that I have with him. But with a woman, it's, especially if there is like chemistry and a romantic connection a little bit. Like, I mean, Lauren and I have spent more time in bed in like one session than anyone I've ever been with, because you can just like do everything. With a guy, you know, like eventually they can't stay hard.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and like they can for like an hour and it's great. And like, or if they take like Viagra or something, but like girls can just stay turned on for a really long time, and we can just have multiple orgasms. And so I feel like the sex becomes so expansive. And if you've like, I'm lucky, I can have like multiple orgasms even like with men, but with another woman who can also keep going. Yeah. It's like the state of ecstasy that you can get to is like unmatched.
I agree.
Really like She's like, Cammy's like, okay, let me rethink this.
Maybe, yeah. I was like, okay, so maybe I'll try a threesome.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
Start
try
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so to kind of piggyback off that, I think because with sex with men, there's such a, we call it the sex escalator, right? You have to get to penetration and orgasm, and then that's it. And so, like, there's such a focus on penetration that, like, you kind of oftentimes skip the foreplay. With women, there really is no sex escalator. There is no penetration. There is no, like, oh, we're going to enter each other, like, done, and then, like, that's it. So instead, you're like, well, what are you going to do? And then you have, like, all these things to play with. You have, you have boobs. You have your, vagina. You have your asshole. You have your whole body. And suddenly, like, it opens this, like, Pandora's box. And like you said, like, it goes on forever because, like, when you come, that's not it.
Yeah.
Either you have to recharge.
Yes.
You can both, like, want to come again? Absolutely. Like, every time I go over to the girl that I see, like, when I go to her house, like, I know when I go to a dude's house, I'll allot like an hour for sex, if that.
Yeah.
With like the girl, I'm like, we're gonna be at it for a couple hours.
Yeah, you're gonna be here all night.
Like, 2-3 hours minimum. Same with like when I go see my doms, because like it's the three of us, and she's in there as well, and like it's always like it is a marathon.
This is poor timing, but I really have to pee.
Oh, go for it.
She's like actually just gonna go masturbate. 'Cause now she's so turned on.
No, I swear, it's just pee. We can keep that in the recording though.
That's lovely. Anyways, what were we talking about before Cami's
Women.
break? Having sex with women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cami, don't force it. But all I'm saying is consider it.
Yeah.
I like lesbian porn, so I think somewhere back there is.
Oh, for sure then. I mean, like, yeah.
That's all I've ever been able to watch, though. Just because I find it more sensual.
Same.
So when I remember when I first started watching porn, I tried watching with, a woman and a man, and I was like, this isn't any fun. So, because
it's always like jackhammer.
Yeah, it's the normal, it's like, blowjob straight to, doggy, and it's like, I want a little bit more of a show.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
I don't know. Give it a try.
I will give it another go.
Okay, please report back.
It really is a fun experience. I guess my final question was, I know you guys, now I guess it's more of a V, not quite as much of a triad, but are you open to that experience again? Like having like a full-blown triad together? What have you guys like, is that a discussion you've had or,
It's not a discussion that we've had, actually.
Oh.
So I love the question because I always I've been doing a couple, more interviews than usual. And so I bring these questions back to Pasha and I'm like, is this something we would do? It's funny right now. I feel like there's no room in my life for it because I have so much going on. I'm like really fulfilled with my work and, with Lauren and with Pasha. And I've dated a couple of people peripherally in the last couple of months, but I don't know. I feel like lightning striking twice in the same place, but I also don't want to, be closed off to it. So I'm definitely open to it. I don't think that it'll happen anytime soon, especially because Lauren and I are in such a beautiful place, and so are Pasha and I, and we're going to travel a lot this year and then focus on starting a family. So, I mean, unless lightning comes and strikes and that person, right, is just so magical, which as we were saying, it's, kind of hard to come by.
Yeah.
Especially for 2 people, for 3 people to all feel that same way.
Yeah.
So I don't foresee it happening, but I'm definitely open. I'm open to all possibilities.
Nice.
Yeah. Question.
Yes.
So right now you have your husband and you have Lauren. Is your husband dating anyone?
He's not.
No.
No. Yeah. And he's been very very content and keeps telling me and reminding me and Lauren that he's so happy right now because he's had the opportunity to, and he'll go on a boys trip or whatever, and the last 2 times he's gone on boys trips where I'm for sure he's just gonna hook up with somebody at least. My husband's very charismatic, he's such a flirt, he's gorgeous,
especially as a Pisces.
Yeah.
I know how they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and he hasn't. And I've been like, you're not gonna, and like I'm kind of waiting for it because I love it. It's a turn on
Yeah.
for me. And he's like, no, I'm just really, really happy, and feels very content. So I mean, I love that for him. And he dated somebody last year who's amazing, and we're still friends. Or we're all friends, but no, nothing.
I think that's great.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the fact that, I think a lot of times when we're non-monogamous or polyamorous, if we don't have multiple partners at once, a lot of us feel like we're stripped of that title.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're monogamous.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I don't want multiple partners right now, so that must mean I'm monogamous. And I'm like, no. Like, I think about that a lot. And I'm like, just because you're not, like, actively, practicing polyamory, you're not actively, like, in multiple relationships, doesn't make you any less non-monogamous or polyamorous. Like,
Right.
if you're content, even if you're single and you're content,
Mhm.
like, that's fine. Or, if you're a couple and you're open, but, like, neither of you are seeing anyone, like, that's fine too. We definitely went through our own little pockets of time where we were like, we're good. Like, we
Yeah.
don't need to see anyone else. Like, we're happy. Especially like if we spend a lot of time at home, then we didn't really feel the need to go meet
Yeah.
other people or anything like that. So I think a lot of times as non-monogamous, we have to remember that, just because we're not actively practicing doesn't mean it strips us of that title.
Totally.
So,
And
yeah.
I think it's like so important for people who are listening to like hear that, it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And just because you like open up doesn't mean like you're open and that's it. And you can't like change your mind because, when I'm coaching people, a lot of times they're all terrified to like have that step into like their first threesome or something because it's like Pandora's box. I mean, yeah, once you have your first threesome, trust me, you're not going to want to go back.
Yeah.
But it's also like such a good thing for people to hear that you can close your relationship.
Yeah.
Say like you go into the red zone and something happens that's really triggering and you need to like do some healing work around it. It's okay to like close your relationship and work on it and assess your new state, regulate your emotions, set new agreements like if you need to. And exactly as you're saying, like express yourself as polyamorous or not, but your relationship should have chapters and seasons. And I love the times where we'll not go out for like months at a time. I mean, I think like our longest stretch was like 9 months without like seeing anybody else or hooking up with anybody else. And it's beautiful. And it almost wasn't conscious. Like we didn't do it on purpose. We have closed, on purpose at times and, reopened or been intentional. Like I'm feeling like I really need to like date somebody else. Like I need new DE.
Yeah.
But, just know that like because you decide to do something today doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that it's your husband, him saying like, I'm good right now. I don't need anyone, because I feel like, especially like monogamous people looking in or just like society, they're like, oh, you're a man. You should want, as many women as you can get right now. And it's like, no.
Healthy masculinity.
Yeah. Healthy masculinity.
He sounds like a phenomenal dude, to be honest.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's the best. That's why I want all women to experience it. Like people are like, what do you mean? You really like when people have sex with your husband? I'm like, yes, he's the best. I feel guilty and selfish if I keep him all to myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Share him with the world. No, I think that's great. And I think, it like I said, it sounds like you two have like such a great foundation of put so much work into it. And like for anyone that wants to like enter non-monogamy or polyamory, like I hope that they enter it from the same perspective of like, not only do you want to be like emotionally aware and healed and everything yourself, but like in the relationships as you enter them, come at it from like, let's build a foundation. Let's do this the right way. Let's not rush it. Let's let it be fluid. I think a lot of people struggle with letting it be fluid. So then they're like, oh, we're monogamous. Now we're going to be polyamorous. And like, that's it. But like you guys have been like, okay, like everything's just going to flow as we want it to naturally flow, and we're going to allow for that to happen, and we're going to communicate, and we're and discuss all that, negotiate those boundaries, all of that, so that it can remain fluid and remain in a way that allows the both of us to feel fulfilled, free, happy, whatever. Like I think that's where people struggle too sometimes, is they want it so rigid, they need that structure that it almost forces things to happen, and you hit those breaking points, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if they let it be a little bit more fluid, you have more of that kind of natural, organic, non-GMO Erewhon type relationship.
Let it breathe. Yes.
Don't put panties on it. Let it breathe. Okay.
Oh, so good. Your one-liners are the best.
I'm really happy for the side of my brain that works on those. I'm like, that was a good one.
It comes so naturally too. I love it. Well, that's everything that I had. Jessica, it sounds like you guys have a phenomenal relationship, and I've loved learning more about it. I hope our listeners took away something from it and had an opportunity to connect with you. You know, check out our podcast, Open Late. I know I haven't caught up on every episode, or like I've listened to like maybe.
I love your Instagram.
Yeah.
Really
I know.
good.
I've been all over your
you.
Instagram, but like I haven't listened to as many of the episodes, so I'm excited to go learn even more about them. But thank you for joining us today. This has been like an absolute peach.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. And I can't wait to have you on my show.
I know. We're super excited.
Wait, and plug in your socials right now at...
Yeah, so at Open Late, the podcast, and my personal for my work, The Journey with Jessica, is journey.with.jessica.
Love that.
Yeah.
I actually am really curious about this Cabo. I remember the other location. Oh, Sedona.
Yes.
Because I have been wanting to do retreats and a little bit more like solo work, because I think, you know, I've put in a lot of work in myself, but I think there's always like an opportunity for even more like continued growth, like you said, really like opening up those parts of yourself and like seeing the ugliness and like just getting comfortable there and learning how to work through all of that. So I've always been interested in more of that, and I want to go
come with us. I would love you to. Sedona is May 15th to the 19th. Sorry, Sedona is April 15th to the 19th.
Okay.
And Cabo is May, I think, 12th to the 18th or something like that.
Those dates are open.
We're open.
Yeah.
We're open.
Come.
Yep.
Oh my God.
It would
My
be
I was
so
just thinking,
fun.
I was like,
sisters.
I don't think I have anything planned so far. Yeah.
Not
It'll
for
be
April or May.
so great. We've
I
had
love
mother-daughters on our retreats, but never sisters.
Really?
And you know, Cami, I've always said you and I should probably get some therapy. So like maybe something like this could be a good starting point, because, you know,
I started solo therapy.
you know, we love each other probably more than we'll ever love anyone else. We're, you know,
I
like,
call her my soulmate.
absolutely, and I totally
She
believe that.
is.
But I think there have been times where we probably need to work through some things that we haven't. So
I'm down.
let's
You
check
can
out this.
Do it on
retreat.
the retreat. I would
Yay.
love to have you girls. Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Well, thank you again, and you'll hear us as well soon on Open Late. But thank you for joining us here on Double Teamed.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Yay.